When you think about cartoons from your childhood, does one with a big blue whale, a captain with a terrible personality, and a lovable, naive adventurer come to mind? If so, it'll be no surprise what show we're talking about today. And if not, well, you're in for a surprise for sure. The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack was a dark, twisted, but humorous show that aired on Cartoon Network from June 2008 to August 2010. Its wild storylines and interesting personalities come from the minds of some of the biggest Cartoon Network powerhouses, including J.G. Quintel, who later went on to create regular show. Although its run was not the longest, its surrealist art style and unique group of characters lives on through the people that watch the show and could never forget it, even if they wanted to. You won't want to miss out on any of these crazy adventures, so don't forget to subscribe. Now, all that's left to do is sit back, relax, and enjoy your journey of the 7 seas as we get into the Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack.
The Misadventures of
So, who is Flapjack, and what kind of misadventures did he get into? Let's set sail to the island of Stormalong, where Bubby, a motherly giant blue whale, houses Flapjack and his favorite adventurer, Captain Knuckles. Bubby has a deep care for Flapjack and disapproves of Captain Knuckles' bad behavior and crass nature. But her love for Flapjack outweighs her disdain for Knuckles. Flapjack is a young boy who wants nothing more than to go on adventures. His childlike, loving nature contrasts his counterpart, Captain Knuckles. He's overall liked by everyone, and he likes just about everyone too. Knuckles is a washed-up old pirate who has been on many adventures which may or may not be exaggerated or completely made up, that he regales to Flapjack, who idolizes and looks up to him more than anyone else in the world. Their main goal is to find Candied Island, so they can gorge themselves in as much candy as they could ever want. But the way to Candied Island is anything but sweet, and the gang finds themselves in some sticky situations in order to get to their destination, bringing them to meet some pretty sugary and sour characters, who we will meet now. The first episode, Several Leagues Under the Sea, begins with Flapjack and Knuckles cruising around on Bubby's back in between 2 sailing ships, whose captains are going back and forth about which ship is the fastest ship in Stormalong. Flapjack, feeling prideful, shouts that Bubby is the fastest ship in the 7 seas. Bubby chastises Flapjack, reminding him that bragging doesn't cause nothing but trouble. The captains then begin doubting Bubby's speed, and in a burst of anger, she flies past the ships. The captains proclaim how fast she is, as a child who is diving beneath the water rises up and states how she is the second fastest thing he's ever seen in the sea. Curious on what the fastest creature is, they follow the kid to an underwater lair belonging to the inventor.
Say hello to the AB, the auto boot brusher,
who shows Flapjack and Knuckles his prized invention, the alpha whale. A strong, speedy, and sophisticated mechanical whale, powered by the power of friendship. Just kidding, it's actually powered by child labor. Feeling challenged, Flapjack then states that Bubby could beat the alpha whale. The inventor proposes a race, which Flapjack suggests should occur in the Sea of Teeth, which is filled with the worst sea creatures of them all. The inventor accepts and sets the date for the next day.
Today we learn who is fastest and who is dead.
Dead?
I mean, slowest.
The next day, the race begins with Bubby's staggering lead, but that changes when the inventor uses dirty tricks to get ahead and begins firing the children from inside the whale to slow Bubby down.
Target-seeking missiles, automatic fingers, mechanical nets.
When it seems that all hope is lost, the alpha whale's engine shuts down, since there are no more children inside the whale to keep it running.
Lucky for us, we're protected by the alpha whale.
Bubby takes her chance to speed ahead and win, but not without saving all the children that were stranded in the ocean. Flapjack learns that bragging isn't the best thing to do. In the next episode, Candied Island, Flapjack and Knuckles sneak onto a pirate ship dressed as sardines. They sit underneath the ship, giddy with excitement since they successfully stowed away on a ship going to Candied Island.
Bye, Bubby. Bon voyage, baby!
Who is she talking to?
In a world of peaches, Majani, don't ask for applesauce.
Once they arrive, they jump out of the ship, laughing in the sailors' faces since they tricked them into taking them to Candied Island. The sailors stare in shock and say they aren't at Candied Island, but Cammy Island. Cammy, a giant, disgusting monster, emerges, and the pirates scream as they leave all the sardines on the island and escape, leaving Flapjack and Knuckles stranded. They realize the sardines are meant to be Cammy's food, and they struggle to get the costumes off. Cammy is about to eat them when Flapjack notices that Cammy is actually a girl. Flattered that someone finally noticed what she really is, she puts them down.
Boy, I think it's time for me to tell you the difference between a man and a woman. A woman is not a woman unless she's pretty. And a man is not a man unless he's ugly.
Flapjack and Cammy become good friends, while Knuckles tries to build a raft to escape. While Cammy is asleep, Knuckles tries to get Flapjack to escape.
Quick, Flapjack, let's get this raft in the water.
That's a raft?
Yes?
Will it float?
Who's the sailor here? Well, now it won't float.
But she wakes up and smashes the raft. Flapjack and Knuckles run away, but get cornered by Cammy, who actually wanted to just show them that she built a boat for them to sail away on. Look, maybe Cammy displays some attachment problems, but you can't find real homies like her that often, especially in Flapjack. In several leagues above the sea, a stranger in a flying contraption approaches Bubby and Flapjack in Stormalong Harbor. He then crashes into the harbor, leaving his machine ruined. The man, who we know as the Professor, explains that he is an estranged brother in the area, which happens to be the inventor from the first episode. He tells Flapjack and Bubby about his dream to build a flying boat, but he believes it to be impossible. After some encouraging words from Bubby, the love-struck Professor gets to work on building his dream invention.
Well, it looks like it's up to Captain Knuckles to keep an eye on this weirdo.
The Professor reveals his contraption to the people of Stormalong, and Flapjack, Knuckles, and Bubby all board to be passengers during his grand reveal. The people are awestruck when the boat begins to fly, and the trio and the Professor sail into the sky. Later, Flapjack sings a love song, which the Professor reveals he wrote for Bubby.
Into the air, into the air, into the air.
And he confesses his feelings. Bubby says she only likes him as a friend, and the heartbroken Professor moves below the ship to sulk as they drive into a dangerous storm. As the Professor pouts, his brother, the inventor, emerges from the sea on the alpha whale, and they admire each other's respective inventions. The inventor tells his brother that Flapjack sent him an invitation to the flying ship's reveal, but he missed it. They reunite with a hug.
I think they're making up. They are making up. They're hugging.
What's happening now, Flapjack?
He's coming back up. Now we're turning around. And now we're home.
Well, that was quick.
They return home, when they remember that the underwater brother is evil, right as he takes a device out and blows up his brother's flying ship. In the next episode, That's a Wrap, Flapjack and Knuckles visit the Candy Barrel, a candy diner/bar run by Peppermint Larry, who is a frequent recurring character, as Flapjack and Knuckles are always trying their best to scam their way into free candy. Larry runs the Candy Barrel with his candy wife, who, you guessed it, is made completely out of candy. How romantic. While harassing Peppermint Larry for candy, Flapjack and Knuckles notice him cleaning off used candy wrappers and reusing them. Peppermint Larry claims that buying new wrappers is too expensive, and then promises the pair that for each candy wrapper they bring in, he'll award them one free piece of candy. Knuckles and Flapjack set off to find wrappers, and when they bring them to Peppermint Larry, he tells them that if they find a candy wrapper with a plus sign on it, he will give them 100 pieces of candy. After tricking Flapjack into doing most of the work,
Why don't we just trade in these wrappers for a little midday snack?
No time, no time. We need to find that plus before somebody else does. Here, I'll hold on to those wrappers so they don't slow you down. Now, let's split up and find that plus!
the pair discover a wrapper with a plus sign, and Knuckles rips it out of Flapjack's hand so he can claim all the candy for himself. He sneaks into the back of the candy barrel and finds Peppermint Larry talking to his candy wife. He sees a giant map made out of candy wrappers on the wall, and hears him say that the final piece of the map, which has an X on the wrapper, will reveal where Candied Island is. Knuckles realizes that Peppermint Larry has been using him and Flapjack to do all the work for him, and rushes out to tell Flapjack. Flapjack rips up the actual wrapper.
I subtracted the plus that tried to divide us so our friendship could multiply.
away.
Then they make a fake one, and they give the fake wrapper to Peppermint Larry in exchange for the promised 100 pieces of candy, thinking he bested the duo. Peppermint Larry sets sail for Candied Island, but is dismayed when he wakes up to find he actually sailed to Pickle Island, and that his candy wife is canoodling a pickle man, destroying the idea of true love for many generations to come. In the episode Footburn, Knuckles and Flapjack go to the 99-pence store to gawk at the selection of cheap goods, and more importantly, the cheap candy. They leave sadly, as the harsh reality sets in that they still don't have any money. Just as they're about to leave, a worker from the store tosses out a full barrel of expired candy. Flapjack and Knuckles dive in and eat all the expired sugary goodness. It was so good, in fact, that it caused them both to fall into a deep sleep inside of the barrel. When they wake up, they realize that they fell asleep with their feet outside of the barrel, causing them to get a serious case of footburn, which can only be cured by whale kisses. In order to get back to Bubby without hurting their scalding feet, Flapjack and Knuckles have to ride the trolley, which is driven by a scary ogre-like woman who seems to have a personal vendetta against Knuckles. While riding the trolley, Knuckles reminisces on his time on the trolley as a young boy, revealing that he met his first true love there, before pushing her into the ocean where a giant squid ate her. They cruise in the trolley at a staggeringly slow pace, which in turn makes Knuckles suspect that the lady driving it is doing it on purpose.
Take care. See you next time. We had fun. Goodbye.
Flapjack befriends her, and she gives him a medicated foot cream called whale kisses for his feet, right before she makes it fly out the window before Knuckles can use it. Knuckles throws the driver off the trolley and takes driving into his own hands, promptly driving the trolley through the town, underwater, and quite literally everywhere but the track. After flying through the air, they land right back where they started at the 99-pence store. The trolley driver pushes Knuckles into the ocean and laughs as he's attacked by a giant squid. And it is implied that she was actually Knuckles' first love that he pushed off the dock long ago. Honestly, good for her. We love to see a woman taking back her power. You go, girl. If you were an avid Cartoon Network watcher, you'll remember how often they showed this episode. In Mechanical Genie Island, Flapjack and Knuckles stumble upon an island that is full of fruit while out sea fishing. They stuff themselves on the beach, where they find a mechanical genie which powers on and invites them to participate in a game. After they win easily, the genie proposes a wager. If they win the next round, he will grant any wish. But if they lose, they will have to stay on the island as his personal butlers forever.
Do you know where Candied Island is?
Yes.
They agree to the bet, in hopes of winning the wish and finding out where Candied Island is, but are shocked when the game's difficulty significantly increases, causing them to lose without any chance, and they are made into the genie's butlers. He requests them to do silly, mundane tasks, like organizing the rocks on the beach, putting them back, and organizing them again. That night, Knuckles and Flapjack scheme on how to escape the island. In the morning, they distract the genie with a poem while they beat it with a screwdriver.
That's not how you use a screwdriver. Here, let Captain Knuckles show ya.
They find that the genie is actually a toy for a giant baby who lives on the island. In the episode Revenge, Flapjack and Knuckles are forced to clean the deck of a giant ship, ordered by the dock hag, a grouchy, hairy, nasty lady because they have too many outstanding tickets but no money to pay them. While Knuckles makes Flapjack clean alone, he teaches Flapjack about getting revenge on his enemies, and says an adventurer is only as good as how many enemies he has. Flapjack then makes it his mission to gain more enemies, and runs throughout Stormalong trying everything he can to get someone to hate him. Unfortunately for Flapjack, he's so likable that he didn't upset anyone, and even when he tried, he ended up helping people instead. He even ends up stopping an act of robbery on accident.
You fixed my back!
Flapjack walks through the streets of Stormalong, utterly defeated, when all of a sudden, the crew from the boat whose deck he was cleaning earlier shows up looking for him angrily, shouting that Flapjack did too good a job cleaning the deck, and now they have to stare at their grotesque reflections and can't get any work done. Flapjack happily realizes that he made enemies of the entire crew. He gives an enemy acceptance speech.
You have to let him give his enemy acceptance speech.
I forgot about that.
stating how he couldn't have done it without Captain Knuckles, who made him work twice as hard. The crew realizes it was actually Knuckles' fault and decides to beat him up instead. Back home with Bubby, Flapjack laments about his inability to make even one enemy. When Knuckles comes in after getting pummeled by the crew of the ship, he gives Flapjack a note that says, "Dear Flapjack, I hate you. Love, Knuckles." Flapjack is overjoyed that his best friend has become the greatest enemy of all. How touching. Next up, we have sea urchins. Flapjack uses the last of Bubby's polish for her beloved bells, so he and Captain Knuckles have to trek to the bad side of town to get some more. While they're over in the sketchy part of Stormalong, Flapjack realizes he doesn't like being in that area. But Knuckles says the only way to handle the people on the bad side of town is to never do nothing for nobody. And if that doesn't work, to call them a sissy. While Knuckles goes inside the shop to buy more polish, Flapjack is confronted by the neighborhood gang called the Sea Urchins. Unfazed by their abrasive appearance, Flapjack calls them sissies.
Sissies!
Back home, Bubby tells Flapjack to not be a jerk like Knuckles, and berates Knuckles for being a bad influence on Flapjack. The Sea Urchins show up looking for Flapjack.
Easy, Bubby. We're on the same side here.
Hey, mister. I'm looking for a blonde kid in a striped shirt.
Try the whale.
And Bubby makes it known that whoever has a problem with Flapjack would have to go through her first, and demands the group leaves. The poor, raggedy group of street urchins turn to solemnly leave, when Flapjack invites them all to a dinner inside, trying his best to make amends for his poor behavior from earlier. In order to show their true appreciation, the Sea Urchins perform a song and dance for the gang, and humbly request if they could stay the night with them instead of on the street. The next morning, they wake up to find all their possessions have been taken, including Bubby's precious bells.
You know what I always tell myself at times like this?
What?
It's Flapjack's fault.
In order to soothe a very distraught whale, Flapjack and Knuckles storm back over to the bad side of town to get their stuff back, and the Sea Urchins challenge them to a dance-off. After a catastrophic injury occurs within the Sea Urchins, the older street folk come down to check out what's been happening, and they stand in awe when they realize Knuckles is there, and they all fall to their knees. Knuckles' legendary way of not doing nothing for nobody was well known throughout the group and gained them everyone's respect. Because of Knuckles' reputation, Bubby got her bells back, which, may I add, this is the only time where his reputation has caused anything good to happen. Also, this proves that theater kids are actually the scariest people on Earth. But I'm sure you'd be scared if you were robbed by homeless newsies, too. The episode Fish Heads gives a whole new meaning to fishy business. Because of Flapjack and Knuckles' carelessness, their candy wrappers were blown by the wind right into the face of the dock hag, whose goal is to have Stormalong known for being the cleanest harbor. Their litter causes them to earn, you guessed it, more community service, where the pair beheads and cans fish all day long.
We can't do this.
Yes, we can.
After a hard day's work, they decide to stop at the candy barrel, and on the way, they realize the fish remnants and odor on their clothes attracts hordes of stray cats. After escaping the feline mob, they arrive at the candy barrel, where Dr. Barber, an extremely unsettling and socially unaware surgeon/barber, examines one of the fish heads that Knuckles brought in. Dr. Barber makes a deal to trade the fish heads Flapjack and Knuckles get at work for money so they can buy candy. After selling him fish heads for some time, Flapjack and Knuckles begin to wonder what exactly Dr. Barber wants the fish heads for. They decide to sneak into his shop in the dead of night. As they make their way towards the back of the building, they can hear Dr. Barber talking to whatever he's creating. They find a creature made out of hair trimmings and fish heads, becoming alive and able to move on its own. Dr. Barber catches them and reveals that his goal was to create fish head barbers, and they just so happened to turn out to be evil. While explaining this, the creatures manage to escape.
So where did they go?
And the three of them rush out to stop them as they begin to terrorize Stormalong with bad fishy hairdos. While brainstorming ideas of how to beat the giant fish creatures, Flapjack and Knuckles remember the giant colony of stray cats they captured before, and they release them onto the monsters, and the cats successfully devour them. Just when they thought they made it through the fish head apocalypse, the cats begin hacking up the hair from the monsters, and a giant mega monster is formed. Dr. Barber confronts the mutant creature, but is quickly absorbed by it, and Flapjack and Knuckles prepare to also soon be eaten by the unstoppable monster. Knuckles pulls out his last piece of candy, but the monster takes it, eats it, and lets the wrapper fly away from its grasp. The wrapper lands smack in the middle of the dock hag's face, and she assigns the creature community service for littering. In the episode Something's Amiss, Flapjack walks into a girls' club in order to cause chaos and to make the girls angry, like a true adventurer, but is shocked to find out that the girls don't care, because they all thought he was a girl too.
Did you just move here?
We know all the little girls in Stormalong.
Flapjack begins to have an existential crisis, and Knuckles tries to teach him how to appear more manly.
Hey! Stop laughing at that girl! Who cares what those two girls and that one guy think?
Excuse me, your daughter looks healthy. Would you be interested in an arranged marriage?
After trying many things to come across more manly, he realizes that it's his voice that makes him come across as girly.
Boy, I guess it is okay for a man to have a little girl's voice.
I'm not a man. Oh, darn thing's always falling off. Time to go home, Cindy.
Okay, Bob. Come on, Baxter.
And the defeated Flapjack goes to Dr. Barber to see if he can perform a surgery to change his voice. When Knuckles tells Bubby, she flips out and demands Knuckles to stop Flapjack before he ruins his voice. When Knuckles shows up, it's already too late. Flapjack had the surgery to change his voice. When he goes to speak, he realizes that he was given an even girlier voice. Dr. Barber explained that because Flapjack didn't like his little boy voice, he gave him a little girl voice instead. Ecstatic that Dr. Barber knew that he was actually a boy, Flapjack feels more secure with himself and asks Dr. Barber to restore his voice to how it was. When he wakes up from surgery again, all of his friends and people from Stormalong are gathered around him, exclaiming how boyish he is. Flapjack turns around and Dr. Barber reveals that he shaved off one of his sideburns to give Flapjack a manly mustache. Next is Gone Wishin'. After a fierce battle with a group of mermaids, Knuckles steals the heart of the Queen of the Mermaids. She rises to the top of the ocean and just stares into the distance strangely, making Flapjack question if Knuckles should just return her heart so she can be normal. Knuckles reveals that the mermaid's heart is full of magic wish-granting candy mermaid tears, and that they could wish for whatever they want. Just as they're about to wish to go to Candied Island, Flapjack requests that they use some of the wishes to have some fun during their last day on Stormalong, and they spend the day wasting away their wishes on their ridiculous requests.
I wish my mouth to forever be full of maple syrup, and also that I was not blind anymore.
Later that evening, when they return home to Bubby, Flapjack notices the mermaid has begun to look not so great. He swims out on a raft to talk to her, and as he hears Knuckles using more and more of the wishes, he also sees the mermaid becoming more and more distorted looking. Flapjack realizes that if they continue using the wishes, the mermaid will die. Flapjack begs Knuckles to stop wishing, and Knuckles reveals he's already used all the wishes besides the one each of them saved to use to get to Candied Island. Flapjack decides he wants to use his wish to save the mermaid, but Knuckles steals Flapjack's wish to use for himself. The two fight each other for the wishes, and Knuckles uses Flapjack's wish to wish for a new hat and a corn dog. Finally, Knuckles wishes to go to Candied Island, and nothing happens. Bubby points out that because Knuckles wished for two things, he used both of the wishes.
You wish for two things, fool!
No! See, I wish for...
A giant storm moves in, and the pair look out to see the mermaid dramatically transform into a beautiful sky maid, which is a mermaid that's in the sky, for anyone who's curious. The sky maid reveals that she was born because a brave adventurer like Knuckles stole her heart and wished for whatever he wanted. She flies off into the sky, leaving the two still in Stormalong without ever making it to Candied Island. In Love Bugs, Flapjack and Knuckles peruse a string of merchants selling miscellaneous goods on the dock when they meet a girl around Flapjack's age named Sally Syrup, who's selling seashells from Faraway Island. She hands one to Flapjack and he listens into it, hearing screeches. Sally explains that that specific shell was from Blood Island. Flapjack and Sally hit it off almost immediately, and Knuckles seems less than thrilled. As they're leaving, a little red heart sprouts and floats above Flapjack's head. Knuckles sees it and tells Flapjack he is the worst problem a sailor can have.
Neptune, that's the worst problem a sailor can have. You're in love!
He's in love. More and more hearts pop out of Flapjack's head, so to take their mind off of them, The pair head to the candy barrel. Peppermint Larry notices the multiple floating hearts above Flapjack and eats them, exchanging them for a heap of candy.
Sally, 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 Sally. We're gonna be rich, Flap! Candy stinking rich!
Knuckles and Peppermint Larry begin harvesting more and more hearts from Flapjack, keeping them in the back of the candy barrel like a prisoner, so Peppermint Larry can sell them to his customers as a new type of candy. Flapjack begins to appear more and more sick.
Oh, Flapjack.
Oh, gross!
So Knuckles and Peppermint Larry decide to bring in Sally's syrup in hopes of getting Flapjack to make even more delicious love candies. While this is happening, Dr. Barber stops by to see what the hype is all about this new mysterious candy. When he examines one closely, he realizes that these hearts are not a new sweet candy, but are blood gnats. Dr. Barber goes to find Flapjack, but both him and Sally Syrup have escaped and are running around the town spreading the blood gnat infestation even more. While they are together, Flapjack and Sally realize the blood gnats came from inside her shell from Blood Island, and that when Flapjack put it to his ear to listen inside, the blood gnat queen from inside the shell must have laid eggs on his head. They get the queen out of the shell and parade her along the streets of Stormalong, attracting all the other blood gnats to follow. Sally Syrup leads them all onto a ship, and she sails away with all the gnats back to Blood Island.
Farewell, Sally Syrup! I don't love you!
I don't love you too!
We also see a love-struck Knuckles gazing longingly at Peppermint Larry's candy wife. But that unrequited love is for another time. In the final episode of Season 1, Tee-Hee Tummy Tums, that is so hard to say seriously, Knuckles tells Flapjack about a man in Stormalong who will leave you a comb if you leave out a piece of candy for him at night, but no one has ever seen him. Filled with curiosity, Flapjack decides to stay up all night in order to catch a glimpse of the mysterious comb Santa. After waiting all day and falling into a deep sleep, Flapjack wakes up to the sounds of a man approaching where he was. He hides behind some nearby crates and watches as a strange man with a bag over his head delivers a comb and takes the piece of candy that was left out. The man turns around and is startled by Flapjack and drops all the pieces of candy he was carrying. The man introduces himself as Tee-Hee Tummy Tums and explains to Flapjack that the candy that he takes for the combs is how he feeds his family. Feeling guilty for making Tee-Hee Tummy Tums drop his candy, Flapjack offers to give his extra candy to his family so they can eat. Because he is so touched by Flapjack's kindness, Tee-Hee Tummy Tums invites Flapjack to his house, and Flapjack accepts. When he arrives, Flapjack is greeted by the rest of the Tee-Hee Tummy Tums family, who also all have bags covering their heads. They explain that they make their living off of the combs they make, but their business has been struggling. Flapjack suggests that it would help if they didn't wear bags over their heads, but the family was strongly opposed to the idea. Flapjack decides to help Tee-Hee Tummy Tums sell his combs by going door to door in Stormalong, but the people seem too put off by the fact that the comb salesman wears a sack over his head. Finally, they head to Dr. Barber's shop to present the combs.
Combs. Yes, I am in need of combs.
Dr. Barber says that he would buy all the combs that Tee-Hee Tummy Tums has if he takes the bag off of his head. Reluctantly, Tee-Hee Tummy Tums removes the sack.
The most beautiful man in the world.
Revealing that he's actually the most beautiful man in the world. He explains that he wanted his combs to sell because of their quality, and not because of his unbelievable beauty. Tee-Hee Tummy Tums puts the bag back on his head, and he and his family leave Stormalong to find a new island to sell combs to. He tells Flapjack that even though he is leaving, that Flapjack gave him a new confidence in his combs, and believes he will find great success in the future. And with that wholesome story, Season 1 comes to an end. But buckle up for Season 2, dare I say, which contains an even crazier, more action-packed adventure. Starting off the second season of Misadventures strong is Jar She Blows. After Dr. Barber discards a giant jar with 2 pieces of candy at the bottom, Knuckles and Flapjack attempt to grab the just-out-of-reach candy. After some brainstorming, Knuckles convinces Flapjack to strip down to his undies and oil himself up to slip in the jar. Okay. Once Flapjack makes it inside the jar, Knuckles instructs him to give him both pieces of candy because he has the sickness that can only be cured by eating 2 pieces of candy. The candy is so delicious, Knuckles stumbles off into a daze after eating the first piece. Concerned that Knuckles won't be able to be cured, Flapjack attempts to run after him, but ends up rolling into the sea. He floats far away from Stormalong Harbor, and after a while stranded at sea, he becomes delirious with hunger. But he stands strong and is determined to get Knuckles the candy that he so desperately needs. Suddenly, Flapjack and his jar are scooped up by a giant fishing net, and he's pulled onto a boat with a full fishing crew. Because of his disheveled appearance, the crew believes Flapjack is a magical candy genie, who they believe will grant 3 wishes to whoever can free him. The crew begins fighting over the jar.
Only the chosen one can free the magic candy genie. Genie. Please, I need this.
And Flapjack convinces them that when they fall asleep, he will grant them all wishes. Once the crew falls asleep, he escapes back into the ocean and falls asleep trying to swim back to Stormalong. When he wakes up the next morning, he finds that he has floated to another island. When approached by the people of the island, Flapjack says he's a genie and says if they take him back to Stormalong, he'd grant them wishes. The people reveal that they are also genies, that Flapjack is actually washed up on retired Genie Island. Well, that's bad luck. Soon they realize Flapjack is not actually a genie like he claims, and they send him to fake Genie Island.
I'm a genie.
Press the grease when you're finished, huh?
And I'd like to help you out by sending you home, if you give me your candy.
When all hope seems to be lost for poor Flapjack, the other fake genies on the island notice that the jar he's trapped in says property of Candied Island. They say that if they put him back in the ocean, the jar will magically float to where it's supposed to be, and Flapjack is sent off.
I guess we are genies after all.
Yet again, Flapjack wakes up surrounded by candy and realizes that he's in Dr. Barber's office and the jar was refilled and shipped back to Stormalong. He's freed from the jar and takes a piece of candy for Knuckles. He finds Knuckles in a jar where he admits that he lied to Flapjack, felt bad, and tried to look for him, and now he's stuck. Don't you just love a story with some karma? In Behind the Curtain, Flapjack and Knuckles get a little more than they bargained for. The dock hag is out doing her favorite activity, spreading joy to the inhabitants of Stormalong. Not even close, she's writing tickets. As she patrols the harbor, Flapjack and Knuckles do what any normal person would do and break into her home. Knuckles searches through her house to find his tickets.
Looking through her drawers.
What?
You're in love with the dock hag and you want to marry her.
What?
You want to marry her and kiss her toes.
And he stumbles upon a box in a closet with his name written on it. Flapjack goes through the box and finds a doll that looks like Captain Knuckles. Knuckles believes the doll is a doo-doo doll, and that the dock hag has been using the doll to make bad things happen to him. The dock hag returns home, and Flapjack and Knuckles try to find a place to hide, and end up in the bathroom and get stuck hiding behind the shower curtain while the dock hag blows up the toilet. She finishes, and they finally make their escape to the front door. But the dock hag is in the living room, and they see her playing with the Knuckles doll and calling it Little Knuckies. Flapjack realizes that the doll might not be a doo-doo doll, but something else. Knuckles begins messing with the dock hag by puppeting the doll from under a table. The dock hag realizes something is fishy and kicks the table away, revealing Knuckles. The captain tries his best to get out of the situation and confesses his love to the dock hag as the still hidden Flapjack has to watch. The dock hag says in order for Knuckles to prove his love to her, he has to kiss her mutant big toe with a mouth. She kicks him out of her house into the sea, where he gets beat up by a family of sharks. Flapjack escapes the house, giving Knuckles the ticket that the dock hag wrote him for breaking and entering her heart. You know that song, The One That Got Away by Katy Perry? Yeah, you know that song is actually about Knuckles and the dock hag. I swear, they were meant to be endgame. In the episode Shut It, Flapjack returns home from a long and tiring day of greeting everyone in Stormalong cheerfully, and laments to Bubby about how draining his day was. Knuckles arrives home grumpier and combative than usual.
Knuckles, get back
back here and shut this door.
You shut it.
I'm not shutting something I didn't open.
I'm not unopening something I didn't shut.
He complains that his life is hard, and Flapjack and Bubby erupt with laughter. Knuckles and Flapjack go back and forth comparing their lives, each one claiming to have it worse than the other. They decide to make absolutely horrifying papier-mâché costumes of each other to wear throughout Stormalong to switch places. As Flapjack interacts with people in town, he realizes that nobody respects Knuckles, and that his life may not be the best thing in the world. Meanwhile, Knuckles loses more and more momentum, realizing the amount of people Flapjack interacts with every single day. Just when Knuckles begins to accept the difficulty of Flapjack's life, he finds out that people of Stormalong trust him when he's dressed as Flapjack. Being Captain Knuckles, this of course automatically means that he believes that he can do whatever he wants, with no repercussions whatsoever. Flapjack returns home with his head hanging low, and with a new outlook on the life of Knuckles. Meanwhile, with his newfound freedom, Knuckles runs all over Stormalong, causing mass destruction while still dressed as Flapjack.
Oh, hi, friend. Do you have something expensive?
The real Flapjack goes to take his identity back, but Knuckles doesn't give it up easily. After fighting it out, they both get arrested, and then promptly let go when the police realize there have been multiple people in Flapjack masks. But they couldn't arrest all of them because of the crimes of one. Back home, they reflect on the time they spent as each other, where they go back and forth again about whose life is harder, while Stormalong is ransacked by criminals in Flapjack masks. Now, before we continue, I want to take this time to make a disclaimer that identity theft is very serious, and I do not condone that behavior. Alright, now that I made that clear, let's continue. Next up is Fancy Pants. When Peppermint Larry closes off a VIP section of the candy barrel, Flapjack and Knuckles begin plotting a way to get in. Peppermint Larry requires all attendees of the VIP section to wear fancy pants, which Captain Knuckles is lacking. The duo heads off to the store to find a cheap pair of fancy pants.
Let's see. Ah, man.
After asking a store attendant if the store had a free pair of fancy pants, the attendant reveals their only free pair. The giant, gaudy pants stand next to a sign that states, "If you can fit into these, they're free." So Flapjack and Knuckles head out to find a way to get Knuckles to fit into the gargantuan trousers. Outside, they stumble upon a food vendor who's selling candy-coated hot dogs. After trying a sample, Knuckles immediately gains a significant amount of weight. The vendor challenges Knuckles to eat a giant pile of hot dogs and the promise of them all being free if he can finish them. Knuckles successfully devours the entirety of the candy-coated hot dogs, and he and Flapjack head back to the fancy pants store. Knuckles squeezes into the giant fancy pants, and the pair are off to the candy barrel once again. They finally make it into the VIP section just in time for Knuckles to explode, sending candied hot dogs onto all the guests and causing the floor of the candy barrel to cave in. The episode Rye Ruv Roo, Flapjack discovers an acrobatic dog on the dock in Stormalong, and the jealous Knuckles tosses it into the sea. Later, Flapjack and Knuckles stumble upon Lady Nickelbottoms, the richest lady in Stormalong, crying out in distress over her lost dog, the Colonel. Flapjack realizes her lost dog was the one he had found earlier, and demands Knuckles to find the dog while he decides to dress up as the Colonel and take his place until they find him. While staying with Lady Nickelbottoms, it becomes evident to Flapjack that when the Colonel is around, her personal butler Charles receives no attention, and really poor treatment compared to the dog.
My lady.
Meanwhile, Knuckles finds and bonds with the Colonel.
You might have Flap and the rich lady under your spell, but it's gonna take more than that to impress me.
Who is now dressed as Flapjack. Back at Lady Nickelbottom's, Charles is finally pushed to the edge, locks the lady in a closet, and reveals that he was the one who tried to get rid of the Colonel in the first place, and is determined to do it right the second time. The Colonel tells Knuckles that Flapjack is in trouble, and they rush to save him.
I gotcha, Flap! Off?
The Colonel, Knuckles, and Lady Nicklebottoms find them at the dock as Charles is about to drown Flapjack, and Charles tearfully admits that he's jealous of the dog. Lady Nicklebottoms feels bad for how she treated Charles and begins treating him like a dog, which he likes very much. Sounds like that guy needs some serious therapy. But hey, if it works for him, who am I to judge? Next up is Oh You Animal. While Flapjack is digging through the trash looking for candy, he's approached by a snooty, witch-like old lady, inquiring where his parents are. He runs away to Bubby, but he was unknowingly being followed. The old lady, who runs the Stormalong Second Chance House for Boys, tries to take Flapjack away, saying that a human boy should not be raised by animals. Even after Bubby presents Knuckles, who doesn't make a dazzling first impression, the old lady still drags Flapjack away. Knuckles and Bubby, well, mostly Bubby, try to figure out a way to get Flapjack back, while Flapjack spends the night locked away in the home for boys. The next morning, Flapjack wakes up to greet the other children, but instead realizes that everyone else in the house is a grown man pretending to be a boy, so that they can hopefully be adopted into rich families. After a failed attempt of getting Flapjack adopted by their friend Lolly Poop Deck,
You like buckets too? I'll take this one, lady.
the old lady reveals she plans on adopting Flapjack herself, and Bubby realizes the only way to get Flapjack back is to do it herself. Her determination allows her to grow legs, and she and Knuckles break through the roof of the boys' home to save Flapjack.
That animal won't get.
She's here.
The old lady finally gives in and allows Flapjack to go back to living with Knuckles and Bubby, and they all lived happily ever after in their totally non-dysfunctional family environment.
I'm home, my dear. Did Flapjack decide to stay?
No, my love. He chose the booby.
Oh.
Hooray! In The Return of Sally Syrup, a very special guest is in Stormalong again, and I bet you'll never guess who. Bubby and Flapjack are woken up by a loud construction noise early in the morning. When looking for the culprit, Flapjack sees a giant contraption in the harbor. When he goes to investigate, he runs into the Professor, who you may remember from episode 3, and as the brother of the inventor from episode 1. He explains that he and his daughter are stranded in Stormalong, while he fixes his flying machine, and Sally Syrup emerges from inside. Flapjack is ecstatic to see her again, but Sally is bummed because they have to stay in boring Stormalong until her dad fixes their way out. Flapjack takes Sally out to show her all the fun things to do in Stormalong to change her mind about his home. He takes her to see and do all of his favorite things, but Sally isn't super interested in being there.
A little boy named after a breakfast item.
You're all going to die.
What?
You're all gonna die. One day. And when you do, we're probably gonna still be alive. Right, Flapjack?
Ah, why'd she have to bring up my own mortality?
Thomas!
They end up at the candy barrel, and Sally convinces Flapjack to write "You stink" inside of a candy wrapper and put it outside and wait for someone to pick it up. They wait until a big scary pirate takes the candy and reads the note. Offended by the insult, the pirate decides to blow up the candy barrel. Flapjack and Sally try to stop him and his crew, but they were overpowered and tied up. The pirate lifts his arm to fire the cannon, but realizes he actually does stink. Since the candy wrapper told the truth, the pirate decides not to blow up the candy barrel and sets Flapjack and Sally free. They return to the flying machine, which has been fixed, and say goodbye, and Sally thanks him for all the fun they got into that day. Young love really is sweeter than any candy on Stormalong. In Just One Kiss, Flapjack and Knuckles visit the candy barrel, where Flapjack notices Knuckles acting abnormally. He catches him staring at Candy Wife, and Knuckles admits he has feelings for her, and his resentments towards Peppermint Larry for being able to gift Candy Wife so many extravagant things. Knuckles decides the only way to win her over is to get better stuff than Peppermint Larry has to offer. The two head to the pool hall to win things from wagering with people there. After scoping out the competition,
You wanna play?
Knuckles challenges a small innocent boy. The boy claims he's never wagered anything before, but that he would give it a try. Knuckles gets his wooden behind absolutely handed to him, and in the process loses all the clothes on his back. When the boy tries to take Knuckles' legs, Flapjack intervenes and challenges him. Although the young boy has extreme talent, Flapjack's abilities were far superior, and he ended up winning all of Knuckles' clothes back and then some. Soon, all the people wanted to challenge Flapjack to a game of pool, and the pair ended up leaving with a hefty amount of winnings. Knuckles decided it still wasn't enough to win over Candy Wife, so they went around challenging everyone they could find, ending up with almost all the finest things in Stormalong. They approach Peppermint Larry and Candy Wife and challenge him for everything he's got, including Candy Wife. Peppermint Larry agrees, and then mentions he owns the title of the billiard champion of the 7 Seas. Flapjack ends the game before it even begins with the most perfect shot ever played in pool.
Flapjack just made the greatest shot of any pool.
And Peppermint Larry falls to his knees, begging for another game. Feeling generous, they accept, but Larry hurts his arm and cannot continue. Feeling sorry for him, Flapjack fakes an arm injury, leaving Knuckles and Candy Wife to play against each other. Candy Wife completely wipes Knuckles in pool, causing them to lose everything they had won. When they return home to Bubby, Flapjack was empty-handed, but Knuckles still possessed his unrequited love for Candy Wife. Okay, well just imagine how the dock hag feels, Knuckles. A little taste of your own medicine. In the final episode of Season 2, All Hands on Deck, we get a new rendition of the opening song. So that's how you know this episode is going to be absolutely insane.
Who needs Candied Island? It's ever at the dock.
Flapjack tries to get Knuckles to sneak out and go on an adventure, but Knuckles rejects him to go to bed. While Knuckles is asleep, Flapjack becomes restless, singing a song of his destiny to adventure somewhere far away. After being woken up by his song, Knuckles begrudgingly agrees to take Flapjack out. They sit outside the candy barrel, which is filled with rowdy, partying sailors. Flapjack admires them and wishes he could join them like a real adventurer. A group comes out of the candy barrel, and a sailor named Thomas Hatch approaches Flapjack, wanting to switch clothes with him to entertain his friends. Thomas runs off, pretending to be a little boy.
I'm a little boy. I'm just a little boy.
I'm a sailor.
More, Thomas, more!
And the sailor's captain shows up and reprimands the group for being late. The other 2 sailors grab Flapjack and bring him back on the boat. In order to not upset the captain any further, they tell Flapjack that he must pretend to be Thomas Hatch, or else the captain would throw them all into the brig under the boat. The 2 sailors teach Flapjack how to act like Hatch, so it would be more believable. And soon, Flapjack completely embodies Thomas's rude, careless personality. Back home in Stormalong, Bubby grows suspicious of Thomas.
'Cause this is all I've really wanted in life. Just to stay at home with a husband and wife.
Who still is pretending to be a little boy. But Knuckles claims it's just Flapjack growing up. As Flapjack spends more time on the ship, he grows closer to the captain, who admits that he has taken a liking to him. While still trying to fully embody Thomas Hatch, Flapjack creates chaos on the boat while tearing the sails and throwing the compass overboard. Because of this, they end up going off course and getting lost in the Sea of Teeth. They find themselves battling huge sea monsters and sailing into a dangerous area with rocks tumbling down all around them. Poseidon hears the cries of the crew in danger and emerges to help. When Poseidon appears, the captain of the crew sends Flapjack to talk to him.
It's Poseidon! And 2 little Poseidons!
Okay, see this, kids? This is what not to do at sea.
But instead of being the sweet Flapjack we all know, he acts like Thomas Hatch and ticks off Poseidon so badly that he decides not to help them.
We can make it through in one piece.
And if we don't make it?
Well, at least I'll have Thomas Hatch at my side.
The crew attempts to make it through on their own, but as they continue to try, it begins to look like there's no escape. Flapjack admits to the captain that he isn't the sailor Thomas Hatch, but a little kid.
A kid? A kid?
Poseidon hears this and decides to help the crew after all, and gets them through the peril safely. The captain commends Flapjack for his bravery and asks him to join his crew forever, and he accepts. Later, Poseidon tells the tale of Flapjack and the crew to his children, who are disappointed with the ending, since Flapjack never returned to Stormalong and his friends. So Poseidon changes the ending, which he says is not technically allowed, but he does anyway. Flapjack returns home and switches places with Thomas Hatch, ready to pursue bigger and better adventures with Captain Knuckles. Thus concludes Season 2 with a larger-than-life adventure, and opening the door for even bigger adventures for Season 3, which we will get into now. Kicking off Season 3 strong is May or May Not. The dock hag is doing what she does best, writing Knuckles tickets, of course. Tired of constantly being in trouble, Knuckles and Flapjack begin to search for the dock hag's boss to complain. They go to City Hall, where they learn that the mayor is her boss.
May we see this, Mayor?
And they force themselves into his office. When they look around, they don't find the mayor, but they do find giant heaps of candy and the Stormalong Constitution. Upon reading it, they discover that Stormalong never picked a mayor, realizing he'd have total power and the position of boss of everyone. Knuckles tells Flapjack to sign his name on the official document, granting him the power of the mayor.
Citizens of Stormalong Harbor, I give you a mayor!
We're all going to die.
Knuckles appears before the people of Stormalong and publicly fires the dock hag, and then gets rid of the constables. Within a week, Stormalong has erupted into anarchy, and the citizens begin to riot and push for Knuckles to go to jail. In order to bail Knuckles out of trouble, Flapjack nominates himself for mayor, citing a clause in the Constitution that's stating that anyone can run for the position. So, Knuckles and Flapjack debate so the people of Stormalong can vote for who they see fit.
Where do you start on the issue?
Maybe this guy ain't so bad.
Next question, please.
When the results are in, it's revealed that the Colonel, Lady Nickelbottom's canine companion, won the vote of the people, becoming Mayor Dog. He pardons Knuckles' crimes with his eloquent way of speaking, which assures everyone that the future is in good hands. Or pause, I guess. In the next episode, Captain Knuckles is diagnosed with old age. And begins to struggle with his own mortality. To cheer him up, Flapjack and Knuckles head to the Candy Barrel, where they meet an immortal adventurer named Ponte, who is seeking an assistant adventurer. He chooses Knuckles out of the crowd, revealing he is the mark of eternal life, which bears a strikingly strong resemblance to a nasty, hairy old person mole. Knuckles dips, leaving Flapjack in the dust, and joins Ponte on his grand adventure. Quickly, it seems that Knuckles can't keep up with the lively adventurer, but when Flapjack comes to Knuckles' rescue, he's reprimanded and pushed away by Knuckles, who doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of Ponte. Flapjack watches from a distance while Knuckles pushes himself beyond his limits under the impression that he's going to live forever. That night, when sitting in the crow's nest of the ship, Knuckles is struck by lightning twice.
That sensation you are feeling, my brother, is the sparkening!
I'm pretty sure it's electric.
And Flapjack begs him to come home, but Knuckles tells Flapjack that he just holds him down and pushes him away again. Meanwhile, Ponte has steered the boat into the abyss of abysmal peril, and the three of them fall in, crashing the boat at the bottom. Fully convinced he's immortal because he survived the fall, Knuckles swims away with Ponte to the shore of Treasure Mountain. Back at the remnants of the boat, Flapjack removes a pair of Ponte's pantaloons from his face that landed on him during the fall, and discovers they're from the Stormalong Insane Asylum. Realizing that Ponte is actually an escaped mental patient, Flapjack goes to save Knuckles. On Treasure Mountain, Ponte urges Knuckles to jump into a giant volcano to prove his immortality. Flapjack appears, waving Ponte's pantaloons and disproving Ponte's claim of his immortality. To combat Flapjack's accusations, Ponte leaps into the active volcano and proves he is not, in fact, immortal. The heat from the volcano causes Knuckles' immortality mark to melt, and they realize that it was just a piece of butterscotch stuck to his face, and he was not marked with eternal life after all. Knuckles becomes disappointed in his lack of immortality, but Flapjack cheers him up by reminding him of the great adventure they just shared together. Next is Who Let the Cat Out of the Old Bag's House? While at the Candy Barrel, the duo discusses Knuckles' disbelief in superstitions, except for cats, which he does believe to be unlucky. Suddenly, a complete jump scare of a cat falls right in front of Knuckles, and his fear of felines causes him to spiral. To help Knuckles get over his fear of cats, Flapjack takes him to the old cat lady's house, which just causes Knuckles to become even more scared of cats. Before chasing after Knuckles, the cat from the Candy Barrel approaches Flapjack. Attempting to return it to the old cat lady's house, he opens the window, but accidentally unleashes all the other cats from inside. The next day, Flapjack and Knuckles visit the Candy Barrel, while Flapjack keeps an eye out for the cats, hoping Knuckles won't see any of the ones who escaped the previous night.
Where'd all the cats go, puppy?
When they arrive, they find that all of the customers in the candy barrel are actually cats. Captain Knuckles goes into a state of shock, and Flapjack brings him to Dr. Barber for help, but finds hordes of cats have already beaten them there. Seeing that most of Stormalong was overtaken by cats, Flapjack rushes to Bubby, still carrying a dazed Knuckles. Giving up Stormalong to the cats, the crew sets sail and finds Dogalong Harbor, where everybody is a dog. After realizing even the candy there is dog food, they decide they must return to Stormalong. Before heading back, they try to think of a plan to get rid of the cat problem back home. When they arrive in Stormalong, Bubby opens her mouth and unleashes a horde of dogs from Dogalong Harbor onto the cats, which in turn fixes the cat problem, but creates a dog problem. The dogs begin taking over the town and causing destruction. And to fix things, Knuckles, Flapjack, and Bubby pay a visit to Dog Catcher's Island.
Let me out of here! This is a horrible mistake! Candy wife!
Now stuck with a bunch of loose dog catchers, they wonder how they'll get rid of them. When the terrifying cat from the beginning of the episode shows back up, the cat successfully scares away the dog catchers, and Knuckles earns a newfound love for Stormalong's kitty companions. You know, after all the lowest lows I've seen from Knuckles, I think not liking cats is probably the biggest red flag of all time. In Catch Me If You Candy, fear grips Stormalong as an infamous candy bandit is at large, causing everyone to be on edge. While digging through the trash for candy, Flapjack is approached by Knuckles, who claims to have found an entire barrel full of free candy. In the middle of their feast, Flapjack notices that the barrel of candy is meant to be donations for the victims of the Candy Bandit. Feeling disgusted by Knuckles' thievery, Flapjack makes him promise that he won't steal the candy again. Later that night, Flapjack goes to return the barrel back to the donation booth. When he runs into the Candy Bandit, he flees, dropping the barrel full of candy and leaving it behind. The next morning, a police officer draws a sketch of the Candy Bandit, which greatly upsets a very traumatized Flapjack. The constable reassures the people of Stormalong that he'll catch the bandit, causing an eruption of laughter from the crowd. As she laughs, a piece of candy falls out of Bubby's mouth, and the police demand to inspect inside. When she opens her mouth, Knuckles is revealed, snoring on top of a gigantic pile of candy. The people accuse Knuckles of being the Candy Bandit and is taken to jail. To try and prove Knuckles' innocence, Flapjack pretends to be on a date with Lollipop Deck in order to lure in the real Candy Bandit. After successfully drawing the Candy Bandit out, Flapjack rushes to Knuckles' cell, only to find a giant hole in the wall and a sleeping Knuckles on a giant pile of candy. Knuckles admits he stole the candy, but still denies that he's the Candy Bandit.
Wait, I can explain! If I can figure out how to get out of here.
After Flapjack doesn't believe him, he decides to prove it and escapes from his cell. The townspeople learn that the Candy Bandit has broken out of jail, and they set out to find him, fully armed with torches and pitchforks. Meanwhile, Knuckles is trying to lure the Candy Bandit out of hiding. The townspeople find Knuckles and corner him, and Flapjack urges him to prove that he's not the Candy Bandit. Knuckles admits that he stopped stealing donation candy, and instead stole the candy from the candy barrel. Peppermint Larry calls for the constable, right as the Candy Bandit's horrifying figure emerges. After stepping into the shadows, it is revealed that the Candy Bandit is actually the constable, who didn't even realize that he was the Candy Bandit. He recounts the nights he spent patrolling the streets of Stormalong as the defenseless defender, protecting innocent people, and when he arrived, he thought he was being rewarded with candy for keeping everybody safe.
Help yourself!
Thanks! Help! I shouldn't be eating candy because I'm too fat!
This candy's too heavy!
Although being disproven as the Candy Bandit, Knuckles still had to answer for the theft that he did commit, and he was assigned to be the defenseless defender's sidekick. In the episode Fish Out of Water, while playing with fish on the dock, Flapjack and Knuckles hear about Peppermint Larry's new concoction and decide to try it. The drink, named 1,000 Pieces of Candy, for obvious reasons, is limited to 1 per customer. Flapjack and Knuckles drink it and ascend into complete euphoria. The two wake up the next morning with a candy hangover, and Bubby warns them eating too much candy will make them turn into fish. Unable to stay away, the pair returns to the candy barrel to order the drink again, but Peppermint Larry denies them, stating the drink is limited to only 1 per customer, forever. The two leave, but re-enter moments later, dressed in feminine disguises. Fooling Peppermint Larry, they successfully order another drink. They continue to cycle through disguises and order more and more drinks. The next morning, Flapjack and Knuckles return to the candy barrel, but are denied service because they are no longer human. They look down and see that their legs have turned into tails. After being chased by the residents of Stormalong, they return to Bubby, who tells them that they have to live underwater or else they'll drown, and she sends them away. Underwater, they find the candy coral, which serves candy just like the candy barrel. While enjoying their candy, Flapjack realizes if they keep eating candy, they may never go back to normal, and he tells Knuckles that they should stop eating it. Enraged by this, the surrounding fish people advance on the pair, but a group of mermen swoop in and save them. The mermen take Knuckles and Flapjack to the secret merman lair, and they attempt to help free them from their candy demons. After weeks of seemingly curing themselves, Flapjack and Knuckles take off their shirts, revealing that the upper half of their bodies have started to transform into fish as well. They go to see an underwater doctor, who diagnoses them with fish flu, which occurs when you mess around with fish. After a few weeks of treatment, they're cured, and Knuckles and Flapjack arrive back in Stormalong to return back to the candy barrel to get more of the candy drink. Peppermint Larry realizes it's them and scolds them for drinking more than they're supposed to. Flapjack assures him that they won't turn into fish, right as they turn into humans and are once again chased away. Flapjack and Knuckles sail away on a humanoid Bubby, who reveals that she ate too much candy while they were away because she was depressed. The three sail off into the distance, looking for a new place where they can belong. In the next episode, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, that's actually the end of Flapjack. I know, it's really abrupt. Sadly, the show was canceled just 6 episodes into the 3rd season. Unfortunately, we will never see the gang make it to Candied Island, or any more of their marvelous misadventures. Thankfully, we have this video for you to watch anytime you crave adventure, or start to miss the people of Stormalong Harbor. If you like this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more content like this, and I'll see you on our next adventure. See ya!